All right, welcome to lecture 22 for CS285. This is going to be our second to last lecture, and today we're going to discuss MetaLearning. So far, when we discussed transfer learning and multitask learning topics, we talked about forward transfer, where you have one source domain and one target domain. And we discussed how in forward transfer, something that is really useful for facilitating effective transfer is to have diversity. The more varied the training settings are, the more likely transfer is to succeed. We talked about how multitask learning can facilitate transfer by providing even more variety, where we no longer are training on the same kind of task in the source domain, but when we have more variety of the source tasks, then we're more likely to succeed at transfer. And then we had some discussion about how we can represent transfer knowledge. We talked about, for instance, how you could use a model because the rules of physics are conserved across different tasks, how you could try to transfer policies and do some fine-tuning, how you could transfer elements of value functions, successor features, and so on. What about transferring entire learning methods? What if we can somehow use multiple source domain tasks not to learn representations or policies, but to actually learn something about the learning process itself? Can we use the experience of acquiring multiple tasks to learn to acquire new tasks more efficiently? That's going to be the topic of today's lecture. So what is MetaLearning? MetaLearning deals with the following question. If you've already learned, let's say, 100 different tasks, can you use the experience of learning those tasks to learn new tasks more efficiently? Now, having multiple tasks, of course, is a huge advantage in this case. So if you've only learned one task, there's not much commonality there, so you can't figure out maybe something at the meta level about the learning process. But if you've learned 100 tasks, then from that you can infer something about the learning process and maybe acquire a new task much more efficiently. So MetaLearning refers to the problem of learning how to learn. In practice, it's very closely related to multitask learning. So you could think of MetaLearning as a kind of multitask learning where you acquire a learning procedure. And there are many formulations of MetaLearning. MetaLearning algorithms that learn an entire optimizer that actually outputs parameters, learning recurrent or in general sequence level models that ingest past experience and then use their hidden activations to represent the learned knowledge. MetaLearning algorithms that learn a representation that fine-tunes more efficiently, that's actually optimized for rapid fine-tuning, and so on. This is a very nice cartoon from a blog post by Lee that kind of illustrates the learned optimizer perspective on MetaLearning, where you could actually use past experience to figure out how to optimize more effectively when you see the same features in the optimization landscape. Now, the main topic of today's lecture will actually focus more on the other formulations, but I figured I would mention this just for completeness. Okay, so why is MetaLearning a good idea? Well, deep reinforcement learning, especially model-free deep reinforcement learning, can sometimes require a very large number of samples. And if we can meta-learn a faster reinforcement learner, then we can acquire new tasks very, very efficiently. So what can a meta-learned learner do differently than a standard reinforcement learning algorithm that learns from scratch? Well, a meta-learned procedure could explore more intelligently, so it could figure out that there are some common patterns in the kind of environments that you're seeing, and that there are particular exploration strategies that are more tailored to the environments that you're seeing that will work better. It could avoid trying actions that are known to be useless from past tasks. It can acquire the right features more quickly, so it can actually modify the neural net so that it actually adapts rapidly for whatever algorithm you're using, and so forth. So to introduce the basic principles of meta-learning, I'm actually going to start with a supervised meta-learning setting, and then in the next part of the lecture, I will generalize this to the reinforcement learning setting. So meta-learning for few-shot learning in supervised settings could perhaps best be explained by this image, which is borrowed from a paper by Ravi and La Rochelle from 2017. What this picture is illustrating is the problem set up for meta-training a model that can rapidly learn to recognize new visual concepts. So just to explain the parts of the procedure, in meta-learning, we typically refer to MetaTraining as a thing that happens during the meta-learning process itself. So MetaTraining is what you use to acquire your learned learning algorithm. And meta-testing is when you use your learned learning algorithm to adapt to a new task. And I will use the word adapt just to more thoroughly disambiguate what happens when you run a learned learning algorithm versus what happens when you meta-train. So I'm going to refer to the process of learning the learning algorithm as meta-training, and I will refer to the process of using the learning algorithm as adaptation. And I just use the word adaptation just to avoid confusing everybody so that we don't call everything training. So it's kind of a two-level process where during meta-testing, you might have a variety of different tasks that you have to adapt to, and each of those tasks itself has a training set and a test set. So in this example, for instance, one of the tasks that you have to solve at meta test time is to learn to recognize these 5 objects: ice cream, dogs, lions, worms, and bowls. So if someone wants a 5-way classifier that will classify between ice cream, dogs, lions, worms, and bowls, you get a training set, maybe with as little as one example of each of those categories, and then you have to perform well on the corresponding test set that has new instances of those categories: new lions, new bowls, new dogs, new worms, and so on. But crucially, these categories, dogs, lions, worms, bowls, and ice cream, were never actually seen at meta-training time. So at meta-training time, you had access to a variety of data sets of other tasks. For instance, the top row is a task that requires you to classify between birds, mushrooms, dogs, people, and pianos. And the second one between gymnasts, landscapes, tanks, barrels, and carnivals, right? So each task has different categories. In this case, the categories are kind of arbitrary, but typically they might be more coherent. And crucially, you have to adapt to new categories that you've never seen before at meta test time. So in this case, your meta training set is actually a set of tasks, hence why this is so closely related to multitask learning. Now, here's how we could think about a very simple view of meta-learning in this supervised set. A standard supervised learning algorithm, one that is not a meta-learning algorithm, learns some function f of x goes to y, where x might be, for example, an image, and y might be the label. In meta-learning, you're learning some kind of function f that takes in an entire training set, dtrain, and an image x, and outputs a label y. So this functional view of meta-learning basically says meta-learning consists of learning this function f that'll read an entire training set, maybe the image of the ice cream, the dog, the lion, worm, and bowl, and a test image, such as that first image of the test lion, and aims to output the correct label. And if you can train this function end to end so that it outputs the correct label for the image x, given the training set dtrain, then you will be performing meta-learning. Now, of course, the big question that we typically have to deal with is how do we read in the training set? And there are many options available to us. For instance, we could use a recurrent neural network that reads in every image in dtrain and its label one by one. So if we have 3 xy tuples in dtrain, we might have an RNN like this that reads in x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, the test image x-test, and outputs the corresponding label y-test. And if we can train this network end-to-end to output the correct label for the test image, then this will be performing meta-learning. So this is our training set, this is our test input, and this is our test label. We'll talk more about various RNN models for meta-learning later. But at this point, we might ask, well, if this is how meta-learning works, then what is it that's really being learned during the adaptation phase? So the meta-training phase refers to training the parameters of this RNN. Adaptation corresponds to running the RNN on a new dataset dtrain, and then making a prediction on x-test. But where does this model store its knowledge of the task? When it adapts to a task, what is it that's actually being adapted? So to make this question a little more explicit, we can equivalently frame meta-learning in a different way. We could say, well, generic learning, regular supervised learning, the generic model of that looks something like this. You find some parameter vector theta star, which is the argmin of some loss function at theta and detrain. So the loss might, for example, average over all the xy tuples in detrain and average together their loss, right? So that's kind of a generic way of writing supervised learning. We can also write down a generic meta-learning problem. So we can say that our generic supervised learning problem is like some function f_learn, and that function happens to be this argmin of a loss. We could say that a generic meta-learning algorithm finds some metaparameters theta, which are the argmin of the average over all the tasks of the loss of that task evaluated at phi I and dtest I. So meta-learning is performed on dtest, the test images, but where phi I is given by some learned function f theta that takes in the corresponding detrain. So in regular learning, you only have one parameter vector theta, and you only have one loss function and one training set, and of course you don't use the test set. Whereas in meta-learning, you use the test set of each of the MetaTraining tasks for MetaTraining, and you evaluate the loss on that test set at the parameter vector phi I produced by your adaptation process f theta, where theta is learned. And f theta only reads in detrain, so f theta doesn't get to look at the test set, but the MetaTraining process does get to look at the test set. So that's why it's a kind of meta-level process. It's find an optimization procedure or an adaptation procedure f theta that will look at a training set and output phi i's, such that when you give those phi i's to your loss, you'll do well on the corresponding d-test. Okay, so that's kind of the schematic view of generic meta-learning. Now here's the question for you guys. Can we connect this up with the RNN picture at the top? Of course, you don't have to use RNNs for meta-learning. There are many other ways to do it, and we'll talk about many other ways to do it. But if we want to connect this generic view of meta-learning with the RNN shown at the top, what is theta and what is phi I? Take a moment to think about that question, and then I'll discuss it on the next slide. So the way that we can frame it is as following. So here's again our generic learning and our generic meta-learning. We're going to actually keep the RNN, so the implementation is exactly the same, but we'll just interpret it a little bit differently. We'll say that we have this one piece of our RNN that reads in dtrain, x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, etc. And it has parameters theta, right? So the parameters of this block are what we're optimizing during meta-learning. And when the RNN reads in these x's and y's, it will produce some hidden parameters, hidden state inside the RNN, which we're going to call hi. And we put the subscript I on it because you get a different hi, of course, for different dtrain I. Now this is just a vector of activations inside the neural net, but I'm giving it a particular name because this is going to allow us to fit this RNN view into the generic meta-learning algorithm. And then we have this head at the end of the RNN, which actually reads in the test image x and hi, and outputs the guess at the label y for that x. And this piece we can call p phi I y given x. So we've just called this piece of the RNN by p phi I, where phi I consists of the concatenation of the hidden activation hi and theta p, which are the parameters of this head. Basically, theta p is a subset of the parameters of the RNN, specifically all the parameters after hi, the thing that controls how x and hi are combined to produce y. So if you know hi and you know theta p, then you have everything you need to make a prediction on a new test point. So that means that phi I is given by hi and theta p. And you can think of them as parameters of a model, specifically this right-hand side part of the model, everything basically to the right of HI. So then this hopefully makes it apparent how we plug this into the generic meta-learning process. We simply define f theta of dtrain as everything to the left of HI. So that's the bit that reads in dtrain and produces HI. And then phi I consists of HI and the parameters theta p of the head that uses HI and x to produce Y. So we didn't actually change the method in any way. We're just reframing it so that it fits into this generic view of meta-learning, which hopefully makes it a little bit more clear what is actually being learned at meta-test time during adaptation. So during adaptation, the learning process, or the adaptation process, corresponds to simply running this left half of the RNN to produce HI, and then concatenating with theta p. And those are the parameters that are sufficient to make prediction on new test points. So HI is the RNN hidden state obtained by reading in dtrain, and theta p are the meta-learned weights of that head that takes in HI and x and produces Y. So if this is a little confusing at this stage, don't worry, we're going to go over this again and again in the remainder of the lecture. But the main point I wanted to make here is that there are these kinds of two equivalent ways of looking at meta-learning. One way of looking at it is that it's just some function that reads in dtrain and x and makes a prediction Y. Another way of looking at it is that it's this kind of bi-level process where instead of minimizing the loss with respect to the parameters, you minimize the loss with respect to the post-adaptation parameters phi I, where phi I itself is produced by some learned adaptation procedure of theta that reads in dtrain. And these views are equivalent. But of course, this latter view makes it a little more clear why this process can be viewed as learning how to learn.